Yarden Ashford stormed through the glass doors of the Grand Crest Hotel like a man escaping a war zone, his charcoal suit damp from the Manhattan rain, his jaw tight with exhaustion. It had been a brutal week. His tech company had just closed a high-stakes acquisition deal that nearly burned him out, and his penthouse was under renovation thanks to a burst pipe. All he wanted was a bed, hot water, and silence. "Welcome to the Grand Crest," said a soft voice from behind the polished marble front desk. Yarden looked up, only intending to nod and move on, but froze the second his eyes met hers. The woman at the front desk had a name tag that read Zadie and a smile that could have knocked the air out of his lungs. She had waves of dark hair pulled into a loose bun, a faint freckle under her left eye, and a presence so calm it made the chaos in his head pause. "I have a reservation," he said, voice lower than usual. "Yarden Ashford, corner suite," Zadie blinked, typing quickly. "Yes, Mr. Ashford, we have you in the presidential suite for 5 nights. Perfect." He exhaled like someone finally allowed to breathe. She handed him a key card. "Let me know if you need anything else." He hesitated, watching her eyes flick back to the screen like she hadn't just turned his mood upside down. "Actually," he said, leaning against the counter. Zadie looked up, eyebrows raised. "How do you survive working here?" His tone was dry, teasing, but sincere. She laughed, a real one, not the rehearsed kind people gave guests. "Espresso, lots of it, and the occasional leftover crème brûlée from the restaurant upstairs." Yarden's mouth curved slightly. "I might need to borrow that survival plan." Zadie tilted her head. "You don't seem like the kind of guy who needs saving. You'd be surprised." There was a beat of silence, charged, not awkward. Then a phone rang at the desk and Zadie answered it, her attention shifting away. Yarden took the opportunity to walk toward the elevator, but when the doors closed, he found himself thinking about the girl with the calm voice and the tired eyes who didn't look twice at his last name. He didn't know it yet, but that moment was the beginning of everything. The next morning, Yarden came down early, dressed in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, no tie. He didn't need anything. He just found himself lingering by the front desk again. Zadie was there, flipping through a binder, her brows drawn in concentration. "You're here early," she said without looking up. "Couldn't sleep," he replied. "No crème brûlée dreams, unfortunately." That got her to smile. "Rough night, rough year," he said honestly, surprising even himself. She looked at him then. "You don't seem like someone who says that out loud." "I don't." Zadie nodded slowly but didn't push. "Well, there's fresh coffee in the lounge. You're welcome to pretend it fixes everything." "Does it come with company?" A pause. Then she said, "If you can wait 10 minutes for my break." He waited. They sat by the tall windows that overlooked the city, coffee cups in hand. They talked about everything but what they did for a living. Zadie told him she was saving up to go back to school. Yarden said he was in tech and left it at that. She didn't press, and he liked that more than he expected. He found himself watching the way she laughed with her whole face, the way her voice dipped when she talked about her little sister, the way she didn't seem impressed by his tailored clothes or perfect watch. She was different. By the end of day 3, Yarden knew he was in trouble. He didn't do this. He didn't linger. He didn't flirt with hotel staff. But here he was, requesting towels from the front desk just to see her, ordering room service and writing notes on the tray to make her laugh. On the 4th night, he found her finishing her shift. "Come have dinner with me," he said. Zadie blinked. "Like, now? There's a table upstairs. We'll take the corner by the window, no pressure, just food." She hesitated, then said, "I'm still in my uniform. I own 5 companies and I'm wearing sneakers." "You're fine." He meant it as a joke, but she stared at him. "You own 5 companies?" Yarden froze. He hadn't meant to say that. "Yeah." Zadie's expression shifted. "You're not just in tech, are you?" "No," he admitted. "I'm one of the loud ones." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "One dinner." The rooftop restaurant was nearly empty. Yarden had already arranged the table, candles, wine, city lights in the background. He didn't want it to feel like a power move. He wanted her to feel seen. You didn't tell me you were famous, she said as they sat down. I'm not, just rich and exhausted. She gave him a look. That's not better, he laughed. I didn't want you to treat me different. I didn't, she said, honest eyes locking with his. But I need to know if this is just some bored billionaire thing. He leaned in, voice low. If I was bored, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on a jet to Monaco. I'm here because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the second I checked in. Zadie swallowed. That's a little fast. Maybe, he said. But doesn't it feel real? She didn't answer right away. Then quietly she said, yeah, it does. They stayed at the table long after the plates were cleared. When he walked her to the elevator, he didn't kiss her. He just looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. I'm checking out in 2 days, he said. But I don't want to leave unless I know I'll see you again. Zadie's voice was steady. Then don't leave. Yarden paused, heart skipping a beat. You serious? She nodded. Stay, let's see what this is. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I've built empires, but this might be the first thing I actually want. Zadie looked up at him, eyes soft. Then build it right. And just like that, the man who never stayed in one place too long found something worth staying for. Rain lashed against the tall windows of the rooftop lounge, but inside, everything was warm, soft amber light, low jazz, and Zadie's laughter rolling across the table like it belonged there. Yarden leaned back in his chair, fingers brushing the side of his tumbler. So you've never left New York? Not once, she said, running her fingertip along the edge of her water glass. I've never even had a passport. Between school and work, and she stopped herself, jaw tightening slightly, and, he prompted gently, I take care of my sister, she's 15. Our aunt's around, but I'm the one who buys the groceries and makes sure the lights don't get shut off. He didn't ask where her parents were. The way her voice dropped half an octave told him not to. Instead, he said, You ever think about leaving? Just for a weekend, Zadie's eyes lifted to his. Sometimes, but wanting something doesn't make it practical. That quiet truth settled between them. You know what's funny, she added, glancing at the rain. I used to dream about hotels like this. About being the one checking in, not standing behind the desk. Yarden studied her, and now I don't dream much. I just try to keep things from falling apart. He didn't know what he expected from her, maybe a little awe at the view, maybe curiosity about the life he came from, but what he got was something rawer. She wasn't interested in escaping into fantasy. She was too busy holding her world together. That made him want to give her everything. I could fly you to Paris, he said suddenly. She blinked, startled. Excuse me, he shrugged once. Weekend getaway, just you and me, no desk, no uniforms. Just croissants and bridges and whatever's on the other side of your passport application. That's insane. Is it? I've known you less than a week. You've known me long enough to know I mean it. Zadie stared at him, caught between disbelief and the part of her that wanted to say yes. Then she shook her head. I can't leave my sister. She's got finals. I'm all she has right now. Yarden nodded once. He respected that. He also hated how much it made him admire her more. Rain check then, he said. Rain check, she echoed. The server dropped off the bill without asking, but Yarden didn't look at it. He just placed a black card inside and handed it back without breaking eye contact with Zadie. She didn't say anything, but he caught the flicker in her expression. Not judgment, just awareness. You're not used to being taken care of, he said quietly. I'm not used to anyone trying. He stood and offered her his hand. Then let's change that. Zadie hesitated, then slipped her fingers into his. They walked through the quiet hallways of the hotel, the city lights casting reflections on the polished floors. When they reached the elevator, she stepped inside first and he followed. Neither of them hit a button. The doors closed and the silence between them turned electric. I should go back to my floor, she said, not moving. You should, he agreed, but she didn't. When the elevator chimed and opened on the penthouse level, she looked at him, heartbeat in her throat. I'm not the kind of girl who does this, she whispered. I'm not the kind of man who asks, he returned. Still, she followed him out. The suite was dimly lit, the scent of cedar and leather lingering in the air. Zadie walked to the tall windows, looking out at the skyline, her arms crossed. Yarden watched her from behind, hands in his pockets. "You're not afraid of me." "No," she said, "you don't scare me. But I don't know what happens next." He stepped closer, careful not to touch her. "Neither do I, that's the point." Zadie turned to face him, her voice was steadier now. "I don't want to be your escape. You're not. I'm not here to be someone's distraction. You're the first thing in months that's made me feel like a person again." She looked at him for a long moment. "That's a heavy thing to put on someone." "I don't expect you to carry it," he said. "I just need you to know it's real." Zadie's breath caught the way it does when something inside you shifts without warning. "You're intense," she murmured, "and you're impossible to forget." She laughed once, surprised. "So what now?" "Now I walk you to the elevator," he said, voice softer, "because you're not ready, and that's okay." She searched his face like she was trying to catch him in a lie, but found none. So he walked her back, hand resting lightly on the small of her back, not possessive, just present. When the elevator doors opened, she turned to him. "I don't want to be part of your world, Yarden. Then let me be part of yours." She stepped inside but didn't press the button. "I don't know what that looks like." "Neither do I, but I'm not walking away." The elevator began to close. Zadie's eyes didn't leave his as the doors shut between them. And somewhere 12 floors above the street, Yarden Ashford realized for the first time in years he didn't want a way out. He wanted a way in. The next day, Zadie didn't see Yarden at all. Not during morning check-ins. Not during the afternoon rush of executives arriving for a conference. Not even when a guest refused to pay for minibar charges and demanded a manager. It wasn't until she was filing receipts behind the front desk at nearly midnight that she saw movement near the elevator's tall frame, unbuttoned collar, and a tension in his shoulders she hadn't seen before. He didn't come straight to her. Yarden headed for the lounge, bypassing the bar and sitting near the window where the city pulsed in streaks of neon and rain. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring out like he was somewhere else entirely. Zadie glanced at the clock. Her shift technically ended in 5 minutes. She clocked out without speaking and walked over. "You look like you're trying to disappear," she said as she slid into the leather chair across from him. Yarden didn't smile. "I had dinner with my board. I've never felt less like myself." She rested her arms on the table. "Because of the company," he nodded once. "They want to expand operations in Seoul. It's smart, it's strategic, it's everything I've worked for, and I couldn't care less." Zadie tilted her head. "Why now?" "Because I can't stop thinking about this," he said, eyes finally lifting to hers. "You. This city, the way things feel when I'm not trying to win something." She hesitated before asking, "So what happens if you walk away from it?" "Then I disappoint 1,000 people and tank a public stock." His voice was quiet but edged. "And I lose what I built." "But you keep your peace?" she asked gently. "Maybe, or I just lose both." Zadie folded her hands. "You don't seem like someone who folds." "I don't," he agreed. "Which is why I'm here instead of on a plane to Tokyo." She studied him. "You can't decide if I'm the problem or the solution." His gaze hardened, not at her but at himself. "I'm starting to think you're the truth, and I've been running from that for years." Zadie sat back, unsure how to answer. "Come with me tomorrow," he said suddenly. She blinked. "Where?" "There's a private charity event in the West Village. Nothing flashy, just dinner and music. I need someone who doesn't care about my net worth." She raised an eyebrow. "And you thought I'd blend right in?" "I thought you'd make everything feel real," he said. Zadie hesitated. "I'd need someone to watch my sister." "I already asked the concierge to arrange a vetted sitter. I wasn't going to spring it on you." Her brows lifted. "You planned ahead." "I don't do spontaneous," he said. "Except for you." She exhaled slowly. "And what am I supposed to wear to this non-flashy dinner?" "There's a boutique downstairs. Room credit covers it." Zadie crossed her legs. "You're very good at making things convenient." "I'd rather make things possible." The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. "Finally," she said, "I'll meet you in the lobby at 7. Yarden nodded once, and for the first time that night, his shoulders lowered. The next evening, she stepped off the elevator in a midnight blue dress with thin straps and a low back, her curls pinned loosely at her nape. Her heels clicked softly against the marble, and when Yarden turned to see her, he didn't speak. She stopped in front of him. "You're staring." "I've never seen something so unreasonably beautiful in my entire life," he said, eyes never leaving hers. She flushed, but didn't look away. "Are you always this dramatic? Only when it's true." They stepped into a sleek black town car waiting outside. The driver pulled away from the curb, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I've never been to a charity dinner," Zadie said after a beat. "You'll hate the first 10 minutes. Then you'll realize everyone else is pretending too." She gave him a sidelong glance. "And you?" "I stopped pretending the second you looked at me like I wasn't some headline." The venue was a restored carriage house with ivy climbing the brick walls and string lights hanging from the wooden beams inside. A jazz trio played in the corner. No press, no photographers. Just polished voices and soft laughter. Yarden guided her in with a hand at the small of her back, not possessive, but protective. They mingled briefly. He introduced her to two colleagues, an older woman with sharp eyes and a man who spoke in finance acronyms. Zadie nodded politely, laughed when it felt right, and didn't shrink. When they finally found their seats, Yarden leaned closer. "You're terrifying," he said. She looked at him, amused. "Because I know how to hold a conversation." "No. Because I don't want this night to end." Later, when the music slowed and the lights dimmed, he led her to the dance floor. Their bodies moved in quiet rhythm, his hand warm against her spine. "You do this often?" she asked, tilting her head. "Dance," he murmured. "Only when I'm trying not to fall apart." "Are you?" she whispered. "Every time you look at me like that, yes." He pulled her closer and her breath caught. Then someone called his name. A man in a navy suit approached, older, silver hair, calculating eyes. "Yarden." "Didn't expect to see you here tonight." Yarden's jaw tightened. "Charles." The man's gaze flicked to Zadie. "This must be a new acquisition." Zadie went rigid. Yarden's voice dropped, ice cold. "She's not for sale." Charles gave a dismissive laugh. "Didn't mean anything by it. Just surprised, that's all. You usually keep your distractions off the radar." Zadie stepped back. Yarden reached for her hand, but she was already walking off the dance floor. He followed her to the far end of the room, away from the crowd. "Zadie, is that how they see me?" she asked, voice low. "A convenience, a phase?" "No," he said quickly. "That man's a relic. He doesn't speak for anyone. But he speaks for the world you live in. The world you asked me to step into." Yarden's throat tightened. "I brought you here because I wanted people to see what matters to me. And now they've seen it," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm not angry at you, I don't belong here." She turned away, and for the first time since he met her, Yarden couldn't find the words to stop her. Back in the car, alone, his fingers balled into fists. He'd built companies, rewritten algorithms, survived hostile takeovers. But tonight, he'd failed at the one thing that mattered, and he wasn't sure he'd get another chance. Zadie stood in the break room of the hotel with her back pressed to the cold metal counter, her fingers clenched tightly around a chipped coffee mug she hadn't even taken a sip from. She hadn't slept. Not really. Not since she'd walked away from Yarden at that charity event 2 nights ago, her heart still pounding with the weight of everything she hadn't said. She hadn't told him that Charles's words hadn't been the worst part. It was the flicker of recognition in Yarden's eyes. Not agreement, but familiarity, like he'd heard it before, like he'd once believed it himself. The door opened behind her. Talia, one of the night desk clerks, stepped in and paused. "You're off." "Why are you still here?" Zadie set the mug down, forcing her voice to stay level. "Just needed to grab my phone." Talia gave her a look. "You've been carrying it." Zadie exhaled through her nose and walked past her without offering more. The lobby was mostly quiet, the late morning lull just beginning. She passed the concierge desk, nodded at the bellman, and reached the elevator before she realized her feet weren't taking her home. She pressed the button for the penthouse floor. When the doors opened, she stepped out, unsure what she was expecting. Maybe silence. Maybe security. But what she heard instead was the low hum of jazz music and the sharp clink of glass. Yarden stood by the window, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a single tumbler untouched in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "I was beginning to think I imagined you," he said. She closed the door behind her. "I almost didn't come. What changed your mind?" "I didn't want to leave it like that." He turned then, and the exhaustion in his face startled her, not physical, something quieter, deeper. His voice was low. "You were right to walk away. I brought you into a room that never deserved you." Zadie crossed the room slowly. "It wasn't about the room." Yarden blinked once. "Then what was it?" She folded her arms. "You didn't defend me, not really. You looked like you'd heard it before." His jaw flexed. "Because I have." She waited. "I used to believe that in this world, my world women were either partners or distractions. Never both. And when I saw you standing there, looking like everything I didn't deserve, I panicked." Zadie didn't speak. "I didn't defend you the way I should have," he said. "Because a part of me believed I'd ruin it if I tried." "And did you?" "I might have," he admitted. "But I'm still here trying to salvage it." She walked to him, stopping only inches away. "I don't need you to protect me from your world. I just need to know you won't disappear when it challenges us." "I won't," he said, voice steady now, "but I need you to be honest with me too." She met his gaze. "Okay. Why did you come back?" Zadie hesitated, then dropped her arms. "Because I didn't want to be right about you." Yarden stepped closer, the space between them evaporating. "You weren't." Her breath caught. "Then prove it." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small navy envelope. He held it out to her. She opened it slowly, eyes narrowing as she read the contents. "A scholarship application. I made some calls. There's a late entry into a business program with full tuition coverage. You qualify." She looked up sharply. "You hacked my resume." "I asked the hotel manager for your last name." "That's all I needed." Zadie's voice was tight. "You had no right. I didn't do it to control you," he said quickly. "I did it because you've spent your whole life making excuses for why you can't want more. I wanted to give you one reason to believe you could." She stared at him, anger and awe colliding in her chest. "You think that fixes everything?" "No," he said. "But it's a start." Her hands shook slightly as she folded the paper back into the envelope. "I can't just leave my sister. She'll still need you, but maybe she deserves to see you chase something that's yours." Zadie lowered her gaze. "I don't want to owe you." "You don't," he said. "This isn't a transaction, it's a gift. One I'd give anyone I care about." She lifted her eyes to his again. "You care about me?" Yarden stepped in, his hand finding hers. "I'm in love with you." Zadie's breath left her in a rush. "Not the version of you who's always composed," he continued. "Not the girl behind the desk. Not the woman who lit up a ballroom, just you, all of it. I don't care what you do or where you go, I just want to be in it with you." Tears welled, but she blinked them back. "I'm terrified." "So am I." She looked down at their joined hands. "What if we don't work?" "Then we don't," he said. "But we'll know we tried." He leaned forward at last, brushing his lips against hers, slow, certain, and reverent. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm staying," he whispered. "Not for business, for you." Zadie closed her eyes for a moment, letting the truth of it settle. "Then let's stop running from it." He kissed her again, deeper this time, as if he'd finally found the thing he never realized he'd been chasing. 2 months later, the hotel lobby was packed with guests checking in for a weekend gala. Zadie stood behind the desk, smiling at a woman asking about spa availability. Just as she finished answering, a bellman wheeled in a cart stacked with boxes, some marked from France, others from Italy. The concierge handed her a note. She opened it and read, "Thought you'd need something to wear when you accept your scholarship in London. I've booked a suite for your sister and your aunt while we're away. Also, the flat in Notting Hill is ready. You'll love the kitchen. Come upstairs when you're done being brilliant." Zadie shook her head, laughter bubbling out of her. Talia leaned over. "Another gift," Zadie nodded. "He's impossible." "But you're smiling," Talia said. Zadie pressed the note to her chest. "Because he meant it. Later that night, she stood on the rooftop terrace, the skyline glittering behind her, Yarden's arms wrapped around her from behind. "So," he murmured, "still think I checked into the wrong hotel?" She turned in his arms and kissed him softly. "No. You checked into the exact right place." And in the quiet between them, with the city alive beneath their feet and the future wide open before them, they both knew they'd finally found home. The crisp London air wrapped around Zadie like a challenge, the kind she hadn't realized she craved until now. Her heels clicked softly along the cobblestone walkway leading to the university's administration building, a folder tucked under her arm and a strange sensation pulsing in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or the quiet thrill of becoming someone she once thought only existed in her daydreams. She hadn't come alone. Yarden stood just a few steps behind, dressed in a charcoal coat that cut sharp against the overcast sky. He didn't hover, didn't lead. He watched, always letting her take the first step. "I'm not used to being the one walking into places like this," she said without turning around. "You didn't walk in," he replied. "You earned your way in." Zadie looked over her shoulder. "I hope your disbelief isn't showing." "Not disbelief," he said. Awe, she rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "You're impossible. And yet you keep letting me follow you around the world. I never said I was smart." Yarden caught up and fell into stride beside her. "No. You just decided to build something for yourself instead of patching what everyone else left behind." Inside the building, a woman with gray-streaked curls and bright eyes handed Zadie a welcome packet and pointed her toward orientation. Zadie thanked her and turned to Yarden, holding up the folder. "I guess this makes it official." He glanced at it, then back at her. "Let me take you to lunch before you start changing the world." They ended up at a quiet cafe tucked between two bookstores, where the wooden tables were just slightly uneven and the tea came in mismatched porcelain. Zadie leaned in, stirring honey into her cup. "I used to think people like you only dated people who looked ready for magazine covers," she said. "I used to think I only liked people who didn't challenge me," he replied. She laughed, biting the edge of her scone. "We were both wrong, the best kind of wrong." She studied him then, eyes narrowing. "You're not flying back to New York, are you?" "No." "You're not going to say it's a temporary break either?" "No." She tilted her head. "So what are you doing?" He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Zadie blinked. "That better not be what I think it is." "It's not a proposal," he said calmly. "It's a promise." She stared at him, then slowly opened the box. Inside was a key. No diamonds, no sparkles, just a single antique house key on a delicate chain. "It's to the flat," he said, "the one you refused to pick furniture for." "That's because you already did," she said, lifting the key. "I didn't touch the office," he said. "Figured you'd want to turn that into something dangerous, like a command center." Zadie smiled, closing the box. "You're really not going back. I'm building something new here. A foundation, not for profit, for impact. The only thing I want to scale now is the way we live." She leaned forward slowly. "You're sure?" "I've spent my life growing things that didn't matter." "You changed the math." Zadie exhaled. "You know this is crazy, right?" He nodded. "And still, I've never felt more certain about anything." 2 weeks later, Yarden stood in the living room of their Notting Hill flat, sleeves rolled up, barefoot on the hardwood, surrounded by half-assembled bookshelves and scattered takeout containers. Zadie sat cross-legged on the floor, reading instructions with a pencil tucked behind her ear. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, holding up a wooden plank. "You're looking at it upside down," Yarden said, crouching beside her. She flipped it, frowned again, and then gave up entirely. "Let's just turn it into firewood and call it art." He laughed, took the piece from her hand, and started assembling. She watched him for a long moment before her voice softened. "Do you ever miss the noise?" "Sometimes," he said. "But I never miss the loneliness." She leaned against his shoulder. "This feels like cheating." "What does, being happy?" He looked down at her. "After everything you've survived, you think this is unearned?" "I think I'm afraid it won't last." He kissed the side of her head. "Then we make it last." The following weekend, they flew Zadie's sister, Sophia, in for a visit. She stood at the window of the flat, looking out at the unfamiliar skyline with cautious wonder. "This city is weird," she announced. "You'll get used to it," Zadie said, setting a bowl of pasta in front of her. Sophia poked it with her fork. "Does this mean we're British now?" "No," Yarden said from the kitchen. "It means you get to keep your accent but complain about the food." Sophia laughed, and for the first time in months looked like a teenager instead of a child carrying too much. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Zadie stepped onto the small balcony with a blanket around her shoulders. Yarden joined her, handing over a cup of tea. "Did you ever think," she said, "that the guy who walked into a hotel lobby soaked from the rain would end up here?" "Every day since," he said. She looked at him. "Liar." He smiled, but it was softer than usual. "I didn't expect to fall in love at the front desk of a 5-star hotel. But you did." "I did." She rested her head against his chest, and they stood there in silence, the city lights blinking like a quiet heartbeat around them. When they finally went inside, Yarden locked the door behind them, not like someone shutting the world out, but like someone finally letting home in. And nothing ever felt uncertain again.